He was a popular high school teen with a big heart.
He was loved by everybody. He was there for anybody, anytime.
He was a really likable and caring person.
Until his life was violently stolen while he slept.
It was unbelievable because I was trying to figure out what was going on.
We pretty much are starting with a blank slate.
It was really a whodunit. Don't have a lot of answers.
Detectives unearth a world of deceit and intimidation.
She said if he would have just kept his mouth shut, this never would have happened.
There were two teenagers bragging about being connected with a homicide.
He was already in custody, so was this something that he had orchestrated?
To reveal a sinister plot.
A fisherman contacted the police department and said, hey, I found this gun.
So that was a twist where you never would have expected that.
The whole scenario was crazy.
And discover a mastermind no one expected.
We were dumbfounded, like, what just happened here?
I don't think anybody thought that this is how it would end.
I felt totally betrayed. I wasn't just shocked. I was floored.
Set against the picturesque backdrop of the Oregon mountains, the small town of Eugene is 100 miles south of Portland.
The community is nice. It's a good place to raise a family. It's a college community. The University of Oregon is there. It's a beautiful area of the Pacific Northwest.
Eugene's a small town, relatively. We're like the second or third largest city in Oregon, but that's still about 200,000 people. It's a quiet place.
In the early morning hours on Monday, October 3rd, 1994, the serenity of this close-knit community is shattered.
A 911 call was made. It was a mother who was in anguish. Her teenage son had been seriously injured, bleeding from his head.
Emergency units race to the home, arriving in a matter of minutes.
When the first responders arrived, they were able to quickly assess that it was a gunshot wound to the head. And although he was unconscious, he was still alive.
As paramedics battle to save the teen, police arrive to investigate the shooting. Janice Itura identifies the victim as her 18-year-old son, Aaron Itura.
Aaron Itura was almost immediately transported to the hospital.
As detectives get to work, they need to determine who would shoot a teenage boy and why.
In short order, we're preserving the scene, beginning to document it with photographs, and start gathering information. His bedroom had been partitioned off inside the attached garage of the residence. He had furnished it or decorated it as, typical teen male would. He had been in bed asleep with a girl that he was dating at the time. We knew he had sustained a devastating gunshot wound to the head.
The girlfriend who was lying beside him was unharmed. Police ask her to wait with the family while they continue to investigate the crime scene.
And a fragment of the bullet was found at the scene. It seemed like the caliber of the gun was a .38 caliber.
The weapon is nowhere to be found, and there's no sign of forced entry to the home.
Somebody had just opened the garage door. It wasn't locked.
There's nothing of value missing. Detectives wonder if the attacker could have a personal motive.
If somebody had a gun and they went in there to steal property, but the people woke up and discovered them, you would expect both people to be shot. The fact that one person wasn't shot and the other one was would indicate that there's a motive to single that person out.
With the crime scene yielding little information, detectives question those closest to Aaron, his family and girlfriend, who were at the scene of the crime.
I mean, it was a really whodunit out of the blue. Don't have a lot of answers.
The police department were still trying to figure out what happened and who was involved.
The detective questions how Janice came to find Aaron.
Aaron had gone to his room, and his girlfriend, Carrie, was spending the night. And then all of a sudden, about 1:30 in the morning, I hear screaming. I went out to the bedroom, and here's Aaron on the bed, and his girlfriend, Carrie's just freaked out. And I looked at Aaron, and he had a big old gash on his head. Then I saw blood. And I called 911, and then I just grabbed him and held him for a while. I was trying to figure out what happened.
Aaron Itura was born on December 28, 1975. He was the oldest of 5 children, raised by single mom Janice.
Aaron was a good kid. He was there for anybody, anytime. And he had a lot of responsibilities as far as helping out, because I worked sometimes 2 jobs, and he took care of all of his young siblings.
Growing up, Aaron was always tall for his age and came to be known as a gentle giant.
People described him a big, lovable teddy bear. He was a really likable and caring person with a mom who was really involved in his life.
In his last year of high school, Aaron was popular, well-respected, and easygoing.
Well, he liked to draw. He wanted to go to art school in New York, and that was his goal.
Recently, Aaron had found love with a local girl named Carrie.
She worked at the little neighborhood store, and they had been dating about 4 or 5 months.
Aaron took pride in his community and was highly active in the area's anti-gang movement.
He had the courage to step up and do what was right. He was just the type of guy that people came to with their problems. He was the protector. He watched out for everybody.
Aaron was looking ahead to a bright future. No one can think of anyone who'd want to shoot this young man point blank in his own bed. Investigators turned to Aaron's girlfriend, Carrie, who was lying next to him during the attack. Carrie tells detectives she awoke to the sound of the gunshot, but couldn't see much in the dark.
Carrie, the girlfriend, certainly needs to be looked at as a potential suspect because of her proximity at the time the shooting occurs.
The police decided to take her down to the police station and to talk to her in a lot more detail about what she knew.
While police transfer Carrie to the station, detectives focus on Aaron's family.
In the early stages, it's really important to exclude witnesses from being possible suspects. Part of the procedure of the police was to take gunshot residue swabs from the people in the house.
I needed to get to the hospital. I needed to see how he was, but we couldn't leave. We had to wait till we were cleared through the gunpowder residue testing.
Aaron's mom and siblings test negative for gunshot residue. They immediately race to the hospital.
Janice was almost immediately notified by a doctor that her son's brain scans showed that there was no brain activity.
The nurse was trying to tell me that, he's not going to make it.
Later that morning, the decision is made to take Aaron off life support.
I think he just was done fighting. I lost a big chunk of my heart. I just couldn't believe that I'll never see him again.
As Aaron's family grieved their devastating loss, at the station, detectives interview Aaron's girlfriend, Carrie. They ask her if she knows of anyone who would want to harm Aaron.
She claimed she didn't know why this occurred and who would have a motive to have killed him.
When detectives question Carrie about trouble in their relationship, she denies any problems.
Maybe she just wasn't being straight or truthful. Right off, you can't rule out the possibility that someone like Carrie may have shot Aaron for some personal motive.
Forensics check Carrie's hands and clothing to determine if she fired the weapon that killed Aaron.
Gunshot residue wasn't there. Swabs confirmed that she was not involved in a shooting.
With Carrie ruled out as the shooter, police ask her if anything unusual happened that night. She tells police about a mysterious phone call Aaron received just hours before the crime.
Carrie had mentioned a call had been made to the house. It was some girl, just wanting to know if Aaron was there. And then the caller hung up.
Investigators have Carrie walk them through the moments before Aaron was shot.
She said she was laying next to him. They were both fast asleep when she was awakened by some noise, which, as it turns out, was a gunshot.
Then, Carrie reveals a crucial detail.
Carrie becomes a key part of the investigation. She mentioned that she had seen who did it.
Coming up, the investigation takes a stunning turn.
What we learned indicated that they knew a lot more about what happened than what they'd said originally.
And unravels a tale of betrayal.
And I'm just like, did I just hear her say what I think I heard her say?
There was almost something pathological about their relationship.
To reveal a ruthless killer hiding in plain sight.
They were absolutely a master manipulator.
It was what they call a Jekyll and Hyde.
It was really shocking how the case turned.
Police are investigating the murder of 18-year-old Aaron Itura, gunned down in his sleep. Aaron's girlfriend, Carrie, is the sole eyewitness to the crime, and police are hoping she can provide them with a lead.
The police department are still trying to figure out what is the reason why he would be singled out and killed.
Detectives continue to question Carrie about the details surrounding the murder.
Carrie provided information to the police that it was two killers. She believed they had their faces covered with bandanas and their hands covered, so she could not get a good description of them. She was able to identify them as young males, but not much beyond that.
But who could the two masked assailants be? Police ask Carrie if she can think of anyone in her recent past who would want to harm Aaron.
She might have had a jealous ex-boyfriend who might have had a grudge against Aaron that she would have been aware of. And so we were exploring all of those avenues to find any potential connections.
After interviewing Carrie, police dig into her background and find no serious ex-boyfriend or anyone else that could link to the crime. With no significant leads, investigators turn to the community for help.
We pretty much are starting with a blank slate. The police had kind of fanned out, into the community and were asking people whether they knew anything about what had happened to Aaron Itura.
But no one heard or saw anything suspicious. For this laid-back community, news of Aaron's brutal murder is a shock.
All we knew was this young man had been sleeping in his bed and somebody had gotten in there and shot and killed him. We were dumbfounded, like, what just happened here? This is Eugene, Oregon. You don't have young people being killed right in their home, in their bedroom while they're sleeping. And people were scared.
Detectives begin to look at Aaron's work with the anti-gang group. Had he made some dangerous enemies?
Law enforcement was certainly concerned about gang activity. There was a sense, anyway, that Aaron, he's been at these anti-gang task force meetings, and now this kid has been shot in the head. So it certainly raises questions.
Police learned that Aaron had been working closely with local anti-gang activist Mary Thompson.
A lot of people knew who Mary Thompson was. She was wanting to sound the alarm about gangs in Eugene. And she established herself as kind of the citizen voice among law enforcement and other agencies dealing with that. She was a working mom with a teen, her son Bo, who was getting in and out of trouble.
Mary Thompson was involved in publicizing the threat of gangs. How that developed for her was that her son Bo, who was 16 and had gotten involved in some gang activity and serious crimes.
She said he's a member of a local Crip gang, and if it can happen in my family, it can happen in any families. And oftentimes she was going to various schools and in the media for an anti-gang sentiment.
Mary's home was open to troubled teens trying to avoid gang life, but she needed help with her expanding network.
Aaron got approached in school about assisting with the community outreach. He took that role seriously.
Aaron was very proud. Sometimes I could hear him talking to his sisters about, I've got to do this. I'm going to help some kid someday, and Mary's on the right track. I thought she was amazing. Here's a woman that's 40-some years old, and she is out with Aaron, making people aware, because most people in this town had no idea that this was going on.
The day after the murder, investigators pay Mary a visit, looking for a lead.
She was shocked that Aaron Itura had been shot and killed, and more than willing to try to help in any way that she could. She offered a whole list of names of people that she knew were associated with him.
Then, Mary shares a disturbing detail.
When the police went to talk to Mary Thompson, she told them about a gang member from Portland that was a Crip that had stopped by her house looking for Aaron Itura before the homicide. And she identified him by the name of Sonny and said what kind of car he was driving. And this gang was dangerous.
He wasn't somebody that she previously knew, just that he had showed up and was inquiring about Aaron. Where does he live and what can you tell me about him, sort of thing. Her information is that people in the gang life up in Portland were upset because of Aaron's cooperation in anti-gang efforts. Given the proximity of when this had occurred to Aaron's death, you couldn't ignore that this might all be coming out of people in Portland. She provided a general description of Sonny and of a car that he was driving. He wasn't on our radar. So the information about Sonny was documented and passed on and shared with the Portland Gang Bureau.
While Portland's gang unit tracked down Sonny, Eugene police talk with Aaron's friends. Had Aaron been concerned for his own safety before the murder?
They said before the homicide, Aaron Itura told them a story about a gang member wanting to do harm to him. But there's not a lot of information.
This could be significant. This might, in fact, be gang-related. So we were looking for the active gang member of Sonny.
Less than 36 hours after Aaron Itura is found shot in his bed, investigators believe the cold-blooded murder of the teen could be tied to his work in an anti-gang group. According to Aaron's mentor, Mary Thompson, a gang member named Sonny had been looking for him.
The result of the inquiry with Portland has come back and they came up blank. They had no information about any Sonny. The car description didn't match anything in their files. So it was a big zero. You know, they were saying we don't have anything. So as a result of that, we were frustrated that we didn't have a suspect.
Then, detectives received the autopsy results.
Aaron sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the head, and it was a single shot.
It was an aim shot with a .38 caliber to the back of the head that would go through the brain, would have almost 100% chance of causing the death of the person that was hit.
48 hours into the case, with few clues to investigate, the pressure on police increases.
There's a sense of uncertainty and unease, you know, that can permeate the community if you don't solve this crime, if it remains unsolved.
When you're in a small community, you want some answers because somebody out there in the town we live in snuck into the bedroom of this young man and killed him. That's scarier than anything when you don't know any other details.
The lack of progress also takes a toll on Aaron's family.
There was times that I would have been willing to follow Aaron, but I put my grief on the back burner. Continue taking care of my kids because it's not their fault. But it was so hard with just certain songs, certain times. I just would kind of collapse. It's just kind of what you do.
Fortunately, Janice isn't without support. Friends like Aaron's mentor, Mary, help the family get through tough times.
Mary Thompson was very sorry. She couldn't understand who would ever do that. We both were grieving. So I got some really nice words from her. I'm in the mindset of, well, we're going to catch who did this, who shot him. And she's like agreeing with me, yeah, we need to find out who did this.
At the station, police search for new leads and find a report about a recent incident involving Aaron, and are surprised when they come across a familiar name.
Mary Thompson's son, whose name was Bo Flynn, was connected to this case. He was 16 years old. Bo had been involved in the juvenile system before for his violence and criminal activity. He was empowered and emboldened by dangerous crime.
We learned that Mary asked Aaron to keep an eye out for Bo and try to steer him clear of trouble. The plan was just simply for Aaron to spend time with Bo, be a positive influence.
But instead of Bo moving away from trouble, he drags Aaron into it. 3 weeks before the murder, they have a dangerous encounter.
Bo and Aaron were in West Eugene and encountered some other youths, and one of them had some prior issue with Bo. Bo suspected that this kid had snitched him off, or they got into an argument or whatever it might be. The confrontation escalated. Bo, who was carrying a knife, produced the knife and ended up cutting the other kid. Patrol officers arrived and they both were arrested.
Aaron went to the Lane County Jail. They had to go down and get him. And I was so mad at him that I said, "You're responsible for your actions." But he did know right from wrong. And he was not afraid to stand up for what was right.
Then, Aaron makes a risky decision to testify against Bo. Aaron was killed on October 3rd, just 2 days before he was due to give his witness statement. Was this the reason for Aaron's murder?
We consider the possibility that Bo was involved in the killing, especially as this potential motive emerged that Aaron was a witness in a pending case against Bo that would result in him being incarcerated potentially 3 or 4 years.
Investigators pay a visit to Bo, who's in custody at the state's juvenile facility for the knife assault.
He was already in custody at the time that the homicide occurred, so was this something that Bo had orchestrated?
When detectives interview Bo Flynn and ask him what happened, Bo Flynn says, "I didn't do anything, I don't know anything about it."
At the time, there wasn't any credible information that developed that suggested that he had orchestrated this crime.
The police don't have any evidence that gives Bo's role in the commission of this murder.
Having lost Bo as a viable suspect, detectives are at risk of hitting a standstill in the case. But then, Aaron's mom contacts police with a disturbing new lead.
I told him that somebody heard a couple of other people at the high school were talking about how they were going to take care of the big guy, and we all knew the big guy was Aaron because he was the biggest kid at Willamette High School.
We also were hearing rumors that there were 2 young gang members involved in the community bragging about being connected with a homicide.
Police dig deeper into these rumors, turning to Aaron's friends for more details.
When we're talking to kids that were associated with Aaron, we're just trying to find out, what do you know and who could have done this? Jim Elstad and Joe Brown had been identified as part of this loose-knit group of kids that were often frequenting the Thompson residence. And they were kind of on the fringe. The information persisted that both admitted and talked about the murder itself. They were saying that they had done the killing. They were proud of what they'd done. These kids needed to be contacted. Even as we were working it was really shocking how the case turned.
Police investigating the execution-style shooting of 18-year-old Aaron Itura have a new lead. 2 local teens have been bragging about the killing.
What the word was on the street was Joseph Brown and James Elstad were the 2 individuals involved in the killing of Aaron Itura.
I knew they were friends of Bo's, but these kids were Aaron's friends as well. Jim Elstad grew up with my kids. His little brother was my daughter's best friend. And hearing that he would even be involved was just bizarre. But that's what they were saying.
We were told from the circle of kids that were being identified and contacted said that Jim Elstad and Aaron Itura had been friends at one time, and that most recently, leading up to the homicide, that relationship had soured. So, a source of friction that should be explored and investigated.
Joe Brown and Jim Elstad, they didn't appear to have criminal records, so there wasn't a whole lot to go on.
Before police can speak to the 2 teens, they get a surprise visit from Mary Thompson.
She indicated that she also heard that Joseph Brown and Jim Elstad might have been involved in the homicide.
But what Mary reveals next stuns the detective.
The homicide happened on October 3rd in the early morning hours, and she tells the police that both Elstad and Brown ended up coming to her house after the homicide and telling her that they had killed Itura.
Acknowledged that she hadn't been entirely candid with us from the beginning. Her explanation for that was, well, I just didn't believe them. I just couldn't imagine them doing it. I wasn't seeing anything in their demeanor that suggests that they had done this homicide, and so I didn't volunteer that information up front because I didn't think it was credible at the time.
But now Mary believes the two teens could have been telling the truth. Armed with this new information, police bring Jim Elstad and Joe Brown to the station for questioning.
When they were interviewed, both of them denied any knowledge of the homicide. Elstad and Brown had agreed to take polygraphs as a way to clear themselves of suspicion. And so they were each polygraphed that same day, and both flunked.
Detectives grill the teens for hours, and eventually they break down and confess.
Brown and Elstad finally acknowledged that they had been involved and had done the homicide.
To understand how Aaron Itura was killed that night, police have Joseph Brown recreate the murder at the crime scene.
He had agreed to come back and do what we call a walkthrough, where you're basically doing a videotaped statement and you're describing, and in some instances you might even enact, what occurred.
Joe tells police he was the lookout, and Jim Elstad was the one who shot Aaron. But what was their motive?
Gradually what emerged was they were upset because their homie, Bo, was at risk of being incarcerated further because Aaron was cooperating with the police and was willing to testify against him in this knife incident.
In their statements, Joseph Brown and James Elstad took personal responsibility for the homicide. They did not say that their activities were at the direction of Bo.
Detectives need something concrete to corroborate their story, so they ask about the murder weapon. When police ask Joe Brown what happened to the gun, he tells them it's in the river.
After the homicide, Joseph Brown throws the gun into the river to dispose of it.
Police search the river for the gun, but can't find it.
The fact emerged, that we were looking for the weapon. A fisherman contacted the police department and said, hey, I don't know if it's connected or not, but I was fishing that stretch of the river and I found this gun. So a patrol officer is sent out and takes possession of the gun from him and books it into evidence. They then do a ballistic check on the gun and they find out it was consistent with the murder weapon.
You have their confession and you got the murder weapon, so you can corroborate their confession to the point where the conviction of those two people is solid.
On October 6, 1994, Jim Elstad and Joe Brown are arrested for the murder of 18-year-old Aaron Itura.
It was very hard to find out. Jim Elstad shot Aaron while he was sleeping. That was just unbelievable.
After the arrests, Aaron's mentor, Mary Thompson, reaches out to Janice.
Mary called me. First it was like, well, we need to get together, maybe have a coffee, and I'll buy you lunch. And then she said, if Aaron would have just kept his mouth shut, this never would have happened. And I'm just like, did I just hear her say what I think I heard her say? At that point, I got real concerned. So I called Detective Rainey and told him what happened.
What we learned indicated that Mary knew a lot more about what happened than she had said originally.
For police, Mary's alarming statement is one of many things they are now questioning.
Initially, it was thought to just be this homicide that had been committed by these two guys, but there was just this overriding perception that she was more involved than she had admitted.
Less than a week after 18-year-old Aaron Itura was shot to death in his bed, Former friends Jim Elstad and Joe Brown are charged with his murder. But now, the actions of Aaron's anti-gang mentor, Mary Thompson, have detectives thinking the case is far from over.
Mary Thompson's behavior had been raising some red flags.
She failed to mention that Brown and Elstad came to her house that night. It was just a convenient fact that she forgot to mention. And she also had made a call to Janice. That was actually unusual, suspicious in nature.
At that point, the police decided to take her down to the police station and to talk to her in more detail.
Investigators want to know why Mary withheld information surrounding Aaron's murder.
In that interview, she talks about being extremely angry with Aaron Itura after he informed on her son about the knife fight. But she didn't want him to be killed.
Do we know for sure that she's implicated in the murder? No. Can we prove it at that time? No.
Since police lack solid evidence that Mary is involved, they let her go. With the killers behind bars, Aaron's loved ones gathered to say their final farewells.
It was one beautiful, beautiful day. High school kids, teachers, counselors, they all showed up. Mary was there as well. And there was probably 2,000 people. People I didn't even know were there. Aaron was loved by everybody.
5 days after the arrest of Aaron's murderers, police are still troubled by Mary Thompson's unusual behavior, so they dig deeper into her past.
10 or 15 years prior, there was some other events in Josephine County, which is a county in southern Oregon. She had identified herself as being a person that was working as an assistant to prosecuting the drug trade. And it turned out that she was a methamphetamine manufacturer at that time, and that she got caught selling methamphetamine. Looking at Mary Thompson's past, she was engaged in a criminal activity. It was definitely shocking. She was a crime fighter that the community trusted, that had engaged in that kind of behavior. So that was a twist where you never would have expected that.
Mary's history proves she's capable of lying and manipulating to get what she wants. Now investigators wonder what she's capable of in connection to this case.
As we knew and learned more about her, it was pretty eye-opening, shocking even to investigators. Part of the picture that emerged about Mary was her relationship with her son, Beau, and how protective she had been of him.
She'd had a bunch of relationships in her life that had not turned out, and the only one that stayed with her was Beau Flynn, her son. And so she was willing to do things that were antisocial and illegal in order to maintain Beau's relationship with her. She viewed herself as being a peer. Instead of directing her son to be a law-abiding citizen, she chose to get in the criminal gutter with him.
There was almost, I'm no expert, but almost something pathological about their relationship in terms of what a parent will do to protect their child.
She knew that Aaron was the only thing standing between her and her son's charges.
After Beau, the only person that had motive to eliminate Itura as a witness was Mary Thompson.
Detectives start questioning the teens Mary claims she's been keeping out of gangs.
When we're talking to kids that were identified as having frequented the Thompson residence, they weren't involved in school, they didn't have healthy relationships, they were all kind of lacking something in their life and felt that. It seemed that she already had developed a family structure that she was able to manipulate for her own purposes, and she had somehow orchestrated the murder of Aaron Itura, and as a result of that, she began emerging more and more as this prime suspect.
But could Mary go so far as to have Aaron killed?
To advance this investigation, the idea came up about doing a wiretap to see if something was being said here that could be used to either eliminate Mary from suspicion or would lead to evidence to convict her of murder.
On the wiretap, detectives hear Mary's son, Beau, who's on parole, discussing gang activities with other gang members.
They called themselves the 74 Hoover Crips.
They were involved in selling drugs and stealing property. We were thinking it was possible Bo was in charge of the gang.
Just when investigators think Bo is the gang leader, someone else comes on the line.
It became quickly apparent that Mary was calling the shots. She was pressuring people to do stuff.
Mary Thompson's role in the gang is definitely as a leader.
They heard Mary planning robberies, beatings, car thefts, just a hive of criminal activity.
Mary Thompson, in her exchanges, in these intercepted phone calls, clearly is talking the talk. I mean, she knows the lingo, the street language, and she's a very legitimate threat. She tells them she's got connections outside of Eugene even that, if need be, she can marshal to come in and start dealing with people.
But nothing links Mary directly to Aaron's murder until she makes a telling statement.
There's a conversation that she has with a gang member, and she says, "Don't worry, I haven't screamed at you, have I? Aaron Itura got screamed at before he got whacked. He knew how I felt." So she essentially admits to the gang killing Itura.
We ripped off the veneer of her being this concerned mom who only immersed herself in this culture out of concern for her son. Facts that we're developing were pretty revealing.
Though the admission is damning, detectives know they'll need more to secure a conviction.
We felt that we needed a direct witness who would tell us about all these conversations that happened, up and including the homicide of Aaron Itura. Our tactic was to break the gang, essentially, and to see what we could do about getting them to testify against Mary Thompson.
In the cold-blooded killing of Aaron Itura, police have arrested 2 young gang members. Now, wiretaps have revealed Aaron's anti-gang mentor, Mary Thompson, is actually a ruthless gang leader.
Mary Thompson became a prime suspect in the case, and the wiretaps were really instrumental in revealing the extent of the influence that Mary had.
Investigators are now convinced Mary is behind the 18-year-old's murder. But to charge her, they need additional evidence.
We arrested the gang for all of these crimes that they committed that we knew about during the wire, whether it was committing a burglary or stealing weapons.
Investigators then question the teen gang members, hoping to get them to flip on Mary. The prosecutor thinks their best shot lies with one of the youngest members of the gang, named Lisa.
We decided that we were going to give Lisa immunity on the condition that she testified about the gang.
Lisa agrees to tell investigators everything she knows.
It became pretty clear not only was Mary the leader of the gang, but when it came to eliminating Itura, the behavior of Elstad and Brown was guided by her.
Mary was always saying that something's got to be done about Aaron. We can't let him testify against Bo, and that shifted to actually killing him.
From Lisa's account of Aaron's murder, the missing pieces fall into place.
The Friday before the homicide, there's a big meeting of the gang at Mary Thompson's house. Mary encouraged Jim Elstad to commit the homicide. The night of the murder, Lisa's role is that she is the one that calls Itura's residence. And when Itura answers the phone, she hangs up on him. And that information gets communicated back to Jim Elstad and Joseph Brown that Itura is at his house and they should go forward and commit the crime.
Mary tells Brown and Elstad to wait until everyone in the Itura home is asleep.
1:30 in the morning, when Aaron was in bed with a girlfriend, Carrie, they were both fast asleep. Brown and Elstad had snuck into the room, and Joe Brown was the lookout. And then Jim Elstad hadn't hesitated and fired once into Aaron's head. Carrie then was awakened by that noise. By then, Elstad and Brown had fled the garage. They go to Mary Thompson's house after having committed the homicide, and then Joe Brown gets taken to the river, and Mary Thompson takes him there to dispose of the gun. And this is kind of significant. That was even done at her suggestion.
At the outset of the investigation, Mary Thompson went to police with information on Brown and Elstad in an attempt to throw police off her trail.
Throughout all this, of course, Mary's trying to keep her fingerprints off of everything, so she's evading responsibility. But her influence, it resulted in Aaron Itura's death.
Mary Thompson was absolutely a master manipulator. That was demonstrated many, many times.
In February 1995, Mary is charged with aggravated homicide for her role in killing Aaron Itura.
I was floored. I just had no idea that Mary could have been involved at that extent. It was just what they call a Jekyll and Hyde, you know. I felt totally betrayed by another mom.
I don't think anybody suspected when she was teaching us about gangs that she actually was planning the whole thing.
Everybody was trying to do the right thing by her and her crusades, and her telling me how amazing my son was, and the idea that he would go out and help her and then find out that she would have murdered my son herself.
In December 1994, Joe Brown and Jim Elstad received 10 and 16 years respectively after pleading guilty to the murder of Aaron Itura. Almost 2 years later, on June 4th, 1996, Mary Thompson goes to trial and pleads not guilty. Gang members testify in court, supporting the prosecution's case.
They all eventually, came on board and were effective witnesses.
After a 6-week trial, on July 23rd, 1996, the jury finds 41-year-old Mary Thompson guilty for her role in the murder of Aaron Itura.
It's been such an emotional trauma on us all. It's not only me that she's hurt, it's not only my son that she's destroyed, it's my family, his friends, the kids involved, everybody.
She's probably been doing this her whole life, but she didn't win.
Mary Thompson is sentenced to life in prison for aggravated murder, among other charges, including hindering the prosecution.
When you think of the level of deception that she perpetrated, and then ultimately to see her held responsible for that, that's a real satisfying feeling as an investigator. The whole case from beginning to end was unsettling. I don't think anybody would have gone into it thought that this is how it would end.
Aaron's loved ones find relief in the closing of that dark chapter in their lives. They try their best to move forward, but thoughts of the good-natured 18-year-old are never far away.
I talk to him daily, But my family was a whole unit. You know, you got one spoke missing. He was the protector. I always feel he's here. You know, he's around us. You know, he still had the courage to do the right thing. And he did the right thing in the end, even though it cost him his life.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Saw you when